There are places, hidden, quiet, isolated, where people gather under the name of peace, purpose, or spirituality. But not every gathering is harmless. Sometimes, you don't realize what you're part of until it's too late. Tonight, you'll hear 3 true stories from people who came too close to something they weren't meant to see. These aren't just cults. These are encounters with rituals, beliefs, and people that defy logic and leave behind questions no one wants to answer. They told me not to go back there alone. My name is Hayden, and this happened when I was 22. I had just dropped out of college and was in a rough spot, mentally, emotionally, financially. I needed something, anything, to give me direction. That's when I met someone who introduced me to a spiritual community. They didn't call themselves a church, or a group, or anything like that. Just a circle of people who gather to find peace. That's what they told me. At first, it was harmless. We'd meet twice a week, in this old house out in the woods. Quiet place. No cell service. You'd drive about 20 minutes off the main road and then walk another 10 to get there. Everyone brought food, lit candles, sat in silence for long stretches. Sometimes we'd sing, or meditate, or read from old books that didn't have any titles. I remember the smell. Always the same, herbs, incense, and something faintly metallic, like rust or blood. I kept going because I felt calm there. More focused than I'd ever been. But after a couple months, things started to shift. They began asking us to stay longer. Just one night, they'd say. The night is when real clarity comes. At first I said no. I didn't like the idea of sleeping out there. But eventually, I agreed. The first night I stayed over, nothing weird happened. I slept in a hammock behind the house. The air was cold, and I remember hearing something in the woods, branches cracking, leaves shifting, but I figured it was just deer or raccoons. The second night I stayed over, I woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of humming. Low, rhythmic. Dozens of voices in perfect unison. I peeked out from the hammock and saw them, a ring of people, completely still, all facing inward around something I couldn't see. No flashlights. No fire. Just moonlight and the humming. I didn't move. Just watched, frozen. After a few minutes, the humming stopped. They all turned their heads in the same direction, toward the woods. Then they walked into the trees. Silent. One by one. Like a procession. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, no one mentioned it. Like it never happened. I asked one of them, a woman named Lynn, who had always been kind to me, what they were doing out there. She paused and just said, "Not everything is meant to be witnessed." And that was it. I should have left. But I didn't. A few nights later, I was invited to something they called the Inner Circle. A special gathering, they said, for those who were ready. I didn't feel ready, but I also didn't want to seem weak. They blindfolded me. We walked for what felt like forever. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel the ground change, soft grass turn to cold stone, and then dirt again. The air got colder. And then, nothing. No sound. No smell. Just silence. When they took the blindfold off, we were underground. I don't know how else to describe it. It was like a cave, but too perfect. No jagged walls. Just smooth stone and carvings, strange shapes, almost like writing, but not in any language I recognized. In the center, there was something tall covered in fabric. Like a statue or maybe even a person standing completely still. They told us to kneel. We did. Then the lights went out. I heard movement. The sound of robes shifting. Breathing that wasn't human. And then, whispering, right by my ear, though no one was near me. I couldn't make out the words. Someone next to me started crying, quietly. I stood up. I don't know why. Just panic. And I ran. Full sprint into the darkness. I hit a wall, then turned and kept going until I found stairs and daylight. I never went back. They tried contacting me, calls, messages, even someone waiting near my apartment, but I ignored everything. It's been years, but sometimes I still wake up at 3 a.m., certain that I hear that same humming outside my window. And I still don't know what was standing at the center of that room. They never let me see their faces. My name is Callum. I was working as a freelance photographer when this happened, mostly small gigs, weddings, local art shows, small town events. I was constantly driving through back roads in rural areas, always looking for unique places to shoot. One evening, I took a detour through a quiet area I didn't recognize. It was late afternoon, golden hour, the kind of light that makes even the ordinary look dramatic. That's when I saw a group of people walking through a field. All wearing identical robes. Dark brown or black, I'm not sure. Their heads were covered. At first, I assumed it was a reenactment group or maybe a spiritual gathering. The way they moved was synchronized and silent. There was something oddly photogenic about it. So I did what I always did. I parked at a safe distance and took out my camera. I zoomed in and started snapping shots, nothing intrusive, just landscape-style frames. But the moment I took the first picture, all of them stopped walking. They didn't turn to face me. They just froze. No movement. No reaction. Dozens of people standing completely still in the middle of a field. Then, one by one, they turned. Not quickly. Slowly. Until every single one of them was facing my direction. I couldn't see their faces, they were wearing hoods, but I could feel them looking straight at me. It was an immediate, gut-level kind of fear. The kind where your instincts scream louder than your thoughts. I backed away from the viewfinder and looked with my own eyes. They were still facing me. No one moved. I quickly put my camera back in the bag and got in the car. As I drove off, I looked in the mirror. They were walking toward the road. Still silent. Still in formation. That night, I went through the photos. Most were fine, wide landscape shots, slightly blurry because of the distance. But the last photo I took was corrupted. Just static. Gray and red lines, like an old VHS that had been chewed up. I tried to recover the file, but it kept crashing my computer. So I deleted it. A few days later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a printed version of the corrupted photo. Only this time, it wasn't corrupted. The image showed the group in perfect clarity, and they were closer than I remembered. Much closer. But what really made me sick to my stomach were the faces. They were all looking up at the camera, at me, with eyes that weren't right. Every face was different, but they all shared the same expression. Like they knew me. Like they were waiting. I called the police. They said it was probably a prank. I stopped traveling for work after that. Stopped photography altogether. To this day, I have no idea how anyone got that photo. Or how they knew where to send it. I was hired to clean a building they said was empty. My name is Nathan. I worked for a small commercial cleaning company a few years ago. We'd get random contracts to clean office buildings, sometimes construction sites, sometimes weird industrial spaces. The money was okay, and the hours were always late, usually after midnight, which I didn't mind. Less traffic. No people. One job we got was a 2-night contract for a building on the outskirts of town. The place had no signage, no listed owner. Just an address and a request to deep clean the interior, floors, windows, and a basement level. The instructions were strict. We had to arrive after 11 p.m. We weren't allowed to use any of the upstairs rooms, and we were told not to move anything we didn't recognize. Strange, but not the weirdest we'd seen. I worked with one other guy named Joel. First night was uneventful, just dusty floors, long hallways, and this constant low hum, not mechanical, more like distant chanting, but too faint to be sure. I assumed it was just old pipes or a nearby building. The second night is when everything went wrong. Joel bailed last minute. I should have rescheduled, but I wanted the extra pay. So I went alone. I started in the main lobby. Same dusty smell, same cold air, unnaturally cold for that time of year. The lights flickered occasionally, and it felt like the building was breathing. Not literally, but it had that stillness that makes every movement echo too long. I got to the basement around 1:30 a.m. The stairs down were narrow, steep, and made of concrete. There were markings along the walls, symbols etched into the surface like they'd been carved by hand. I don't know what they meant, and I didn't want to find out. The basement itself was huge. Too big for a building that size. Almost like it went underneath neighboring properties. The walls were lined with tall wooden shelves full of jars. Hundreds of them. Some filled with what looked like herbs. Others with liquid. A few I couldn't identify. One had something floating inside, pale and thin like a root, or a finger. I worked quickly. Avoided touching anything. But as I moved toward the center of the room, I noticed something that made me stop. The floor was wet. Not puddled, just damp, like condensation, but only in a perfect circle about 10 feet wide. In the middle of that circle was a chair. Old, wooden, facing the wall. On impulse, I snapped a photo of it. No idea why. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Behind me. I turned, nothing. Then I heard them again. Closer. Crisp on the concrete floor. I called out, "Hello? Joel?" No answer. The air shifted. Got heavy. I don't know how else to say it, like the atmosphere thickened. My ears started ringing slightly, and the lights dimmed for just a second. Then I heard something worse. Breathing. But not mine. It was coming from the chair. I didn't even look again. I turned and ran. Up the stairs. Through the lobby. Out to my car. I didn't lock the door. I didn't text my boss. I just drove. I didn't even look at the building again until I was miles away. Later that week, I checked the photo I took. It was black. Not just underexposed, pitch black. Like the camera had refused to capture whatever was in the frame. A few days later, our company was told the job was complete, even though I hadn't finished the basement. I never got the full payment. The client disconnected their number. I never found the building again. I even tried, drove that route a dozen times. The address doesn't exist anymore. And I still don't know what was breathing behind me in that chair. Belief can be powerful. But when belief turns into secrecy, and secrecy turns into control, that's when you should run. If you've ever encountered a group, a gathering, or a person who made you feel like something was deeply wrong, trust that feeling. Thanks for listening. And remember, some doors, once opened, never fully close.